Hi everyone, my name is Lilly Herburger.
And I'm Shawn.
We're going to be going over some of the natural and biological systems. Okay, so this site has been a highly disturbed site for the past 150 years or more. As you can see, this picture is from 1921, and it's a pretty desolate landscape, not very much wildlife going on there. If you go back to this image of today, it's obviously a lot more beautiful, a lot more greenery and wildlife than there was in 1921. So what is a brownfield? There's a lot of areas on the Seekonk shore that are categorized as brownfield. So a brownfield site is real property, the expansion, redevelopment, or reuse of which may be complicated by the presence or potential presence of a hazardous substance, pollutant, or contaminant. That is the definition from the EPA. And as of 2015, Rhode Island has received over $36 million in brownfield governmental funding to basically redevelop these sites so they're safe. So that's a good news. That is good news. Basically, being a brownfield is not necessarily a bad thing, but it's also an opportunity for government grant funding.
So this is a little bit of our soil analysis, and we have a couple slides covering this. So this map is our focus area yet again. It's focusing on our restrictions for development based on soil quality. So the green area proposes moderate constraints for development, and as you can see, that's almost probably 95% of our site, whereas the small areas such as the purple and the pink are severe constraints in relative to the depth of bedrock and or a slope that is unsuitable for construction. Another part of the soil analysis was nitrogen soil leaching. Also, as you can see here, probably covering 80% of our site are high nitrogen soil leaching areas that can affect the soil in negative ways for vegetation, animals, or other things. Also, this is another permeability analysis for soil instead of pavement. So the group A, highlighted in pink, is low runoff potential and high infiltration into the soil, which can actually help collect rainwater and store it and filter it before it gets into the water. So those are the areas that collect good amounts of water, whereas group B isn't really on the map except for the bottom part right there. And group C, located in yellow, is low infiltration rates, which is bad. It just promotes more runoff for the water and can eventually lower the quality of the water.
So the water quality of the Seekonk has been a problem for a long time, mostly because of, if you think about the watershed picture we saw before, all the pollution that's coming through that watershed is coming down into the Seekonk, and a lot of the industrial growth, that whole area has resulted in the industrial pollution that is present. Some of the pollutants are heavy metal sediment, untreated sewage, inadvertent oil and gasoline spills, as well as trash. And some non-point pollution runoff is generated by the vast issues which occur in upland areas of the river's watershed. So some of the impacts of the water pollution is the categorization of the Seekonk as an impaired waterway. The Rhode Island DEM has made this classification. So basically the Seekonk River is considered too polluted and degraded to meet water quality standards set by the state. So it is not safe for aquatic life, drinking water, shellfish consumption, fish consumption, primary contact recreation such as swimming, and secondary contact recreation such as boating, but there is a lot of boating and kayaking and rowing activities on the river, so making sure that those activities are safe for everyone that is participating is very important. And this waterway connection has been prioritized for industry and not for wildlife passageway or for recreational use.
So we're going to talk a bit about the invasive species here on the site. So due to heavy site disturbance, it is given way for invasive species, which we'll detail later. It kind of gives them an opportunity to come into the site and take over while there's nothing there, or while it's in a process of regrowth. So some of the invasive species that we noted when we were on site were Phragmites, Japanese knotweed, mugwort, and bittersweet, and these can be extremely invasive and can impact the plants and wildlife on the site. Fish kills, the last major fish kill recorded was in summer of 2015 based on the water quality, so it hasn't happened in a couple of years, which is good news, and it shows that the water is slowly starting to become a little bit healthier. Indicator species, species that indicate environmental conditions, they can be the most sensitive in a region, and their presence acts as monitoring signs for biologists. So some things we observed on the site were actually a bald eagle and harbor seals. So it's kind of good to see this kind of ecological combination and more animals on the site that you wouldn't normally see. So I think that poses a good site for these types of animals in the future.
And then just here's some pictures of the site that we have.
As you can kind of see, there's the water obviously, and then lower towards in between the water and the tree line, some marshlands that can provide good opportunities for fish farming and other kinds of wildlife to provide habitat for, and also upland in the trees. Yet again, this is kind of a post-industrial site on the left, kind of grown wild after it was neglected, and there's probably a lot of invasive plants in there, kind of protecting more native plantings and plantings that can help benefit the wildlife. On the right, it might be hard to see, but there's actually bittersweet vine all over these trees, restricting tree growth and destroying habitats for birds. So this is kind of just an overview of a sample wildlife for aquatic vegetation or animals in the area. So eelgrass, which is actually declining in the state, provides good habitat for shellfish and other kind of animals that dwell along the bottom of rivers. Widgeon grass, seaweed, striped bass, summer flounder, eels, herring, menhaden, blue crab, and crayfish. And some of you probably notice in the Narragansett Bay, if you're fishing, if you ever fished before, you see fish like this, but in this river, they're mostly migratory and don't really breed in these areas. Another example of coastal wildlife, and these plants will have more drought resistance and also salt resistance as you get from the salt water. So you're going to have more plants like swamp white oak, red maples, black tupelos, salt hay grasses, and smooth gore grass, which are the main beach marsh grasses found in the area, as well as swans, which everybody's probably had a run-in with, heron, Canadian geese, diamondback terrapin, and terns. And lastly, it's an example of inland wildlife, which most of you probably experienced in your day-to-day life. Some of the trees, example, you probably see oaks all the time and maples. You also are going to see raccoons, deers, coyotes, bats, and squirrels all over the place. So this is kind of an example of what we could be aiming for this site as we provide potential areas for habitat restoration. And these are some of our sources on the data.